Good evening, everyone. You've beaten me to it, but please join me again in thanking the University organist, Annette Gerg. Welcome, Kaya. My name is Professor Cara McNish, and I'm the Chair of the Academic Board, the peak academic body of the University. I'm here to tell you a little about tonight's graduation ceremony, its history, the people involved, and how this evening's events will proceed. Before proceedings commence, could I please request that your mobile telephones are turned down or off, and advise that should an emergency occur in the venue, we'll take our lead from the theatre staff. On behalf of all my university colleagues, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this evening's graduation ceremony. To begin, I'd like to acknowledge that our ceremony tonight takes place on Whadjuk Budja, the country of the Noongar people, and pay my respects to Noongar elders past, present and emerging as custodians of the historic place on which we meet. And I'm pleased to say that we will have a formal welcome to country this evening from Barry Maguire. Today's graduation ceremony is also a traditional celebration of the university. UWA takes great pride in its history, having enrolled its first students over 100 years ago. However, our roots are deeply embedded in the academic values and traditions that for many centuries have given rise to the world's finest universities. The traditional nature of our graduation ceremony serves to highlight this enduring connection with our heritage. As has been the case in universities across the globe and throughout the centuries, the ceremony will begin with the arrival of the academic procession. This procession comprises graduate scholars, academics, and office bearers of the university attired in their formal academic regalia. UWA is very much an international institution, and our academic staff come from universities from a wide variety of countries and cultures. So in this evening's procession, you will see a varied and often colourful array of regalia from around the world. The procession will be led by graduating students, followed by academic staff in order of seniority. At the end of the procession will come the principal officers of the university, members of the university's governing body, the Senate, and our distinguished guests. The final figure in the procession will be the Pro-Chancellor of the university, Dr. Penelope Flett, who is immediately preceded by the mace bearer. The mace will be carried by a current student and is a symbolic representation of the authority vested in the Chancellor, who is the chair of the University Senate. After the national anthem, the Pro-Chancellor will formally welcome all graduates and guests and guide us through the ceremony. During the ceremony, there will be a short musical interlude performed by students of the UWA School of Music. You will, I believe, find much to interest you during this evening's processions, but of course the main reason you have come is to witness the graduation of our scholars, and I hope you will all join with my colleagues and me in warmly congratulating each scholar who comes onto this stage to have his or her degree conferred. And while it is an historic setting, it is also a celebration, and I invite you to express your enthusiasm wholeheartedly as our graduates are awarded their degrees. There will be a professional video and photographs of the ceremony and professional photographers waiting downstairs. But please do feel free to stand where you are to capture your own images of the moment. Now, would you please all rise to your feet so that the arrival of the academic procession can commence. Thank you.
Please be seated. Members of the University Senate, distinguished guests, graduands, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure to welcome you to our 9th autumn graduation ceremony. And I particularly wish to acknowledge the presence at the ceremony of Ms Simone Young, AM, who will be awarded an honorary degree of Doctor of Music and will deliver the graduation address, and her guests. Ms Kate Milligan, who will deliver the valedictory address, and her guests. The Warden of Convocation, Dr Doug McGee, members of Senate, Emeritus Professor Jim Everett, former honorary degree recipients Dr Ian Grandage and Dr Sue Boyd, former Chancellor's Medal recipients Dr Joan Pope, OAM, Ms Joan Robbins and Mrs Annette Girk. Now, at this point, it's a tradition of the university to pay respects to Aboriginal people, the custodians of the land upon which we are going to have our ceremony. We usually have a welcome to country, but unfortunately, at the last minute, the person who does this so beautifully for us is unexpectedly indisposed. So I will acknowledge the custodians and traditional owners of the land on which the university campuses are located. And at this main campus, Crawley, the university acknowledges the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional owners of the land upon which we are situated tonight. The Whadjuk Noongar remain the spiritual and cultural custodians of their land and continue to practice their values, their languages, their belief and their knowledge. So this evening we share in a ceremony which has been deeply rooted in the history and tradition of universities in this country and around the world. And it marks the formal recognition by the university of the achievement of its graduands in meeting the standards and requirements of the various courses of study and research which they've undertaken at this place over a number of years. The ceremony joins them with members of the academic staff who've taught them or supervised their work, and with representatives of the convocation of the university, which is part of the university and which, as graduates, they will join. The ceremony also brings graduands together with parents, friends and other relatives who have supported these graduands in their work and share intimately with their achievements. We have a long history of achievement and excellence in teaching and research and engagement with the wider community for the benefit of the state, the nation, and indeed the global community of which we are all part. It was established in the words of the University Act in 1911 to advance the prosperity and welfare of the people. And it was the product of the vision and energy and commitment of extraordinary individuals who founded it and were its benefactors. So the university's achievements are not the achievements of an institution, they are the achievements of people who teach and research here, who govern and administer the university, and the alumni who go from this place to make their contributions in a myriad of different ways. And it's not just a degree with which you leave this place, it's a degree from the University of Western Australia, which is one of Australia's leading universities and, according to international rankings, one of the world's leading universities. So each of you who graduate tonight will be presented with a Noongar message stick, carrying with it the story of this special place. And according to Indigenous beliefs, tribal boundaries were established by the great spirits of the Dreamtime. No human had the right to interfere with those boundaries or to venture onto other tribal land, but the bearer of a message stick could cross those boundaries. The sticks were traditional passports from one nation to another, in Indigenous Australia, and they're seen as carrying the stories of Indigenous people across the land. So in a symbolic way, we entrust the story of this place to you to carry it into the world. The gift symbolises a permanent connection expressed in the timeless language of Noongar people. For all of you, I express the hope that the knowledge and skills you've acquired at this university will enable you to follow the lifelong path reflected in its motto, to seek wisdom and to apply it for the good of all. Ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to invite the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dawn Freshwater, to give a brief opening address to today's graduates and all their guests.
Pro-Chancellor, graduates, parents, partners and friends of the university, congratulations. It is my privilege to congratulate you on behalf of the University of Western Australia. Tonight's ceremony is an opportunity for all of us, graduating students, parents and friends and staff, to formally recognise and celebrate your outstanding achievement in graduating from this university. Graduation is a culmination of many years of hard work, and I hope that you'll remember your time as a UWA student with pride, excitement and accomplishment. During your time here, you will of course enjoy many moments of great joy and satisfaction, as well as some setbacks and challenges. The disciplines that you've chosen to study within the arts and the ones that you've immersed yourself in will significantly prepare you for the future at many levels, and you should feel a great sense of pride at how those years of persistence and resilience have paid off. As you sit in this grand hall with your fellow graduates, surrounded by your loved ones, celebrate and look into the future with ambition and purpose. We know that we've provided you with something great, but it's more than a world-class education. Being a student is much more than providing you with access to academic excellence. I hope that you've found your time here at UWA as a student entertaining in many other ways and have become involved in many facets of campus life: clubs, societies, internships, work-integrated learning, overseas exchange programs, and many more activities. All of these experiences have offered you an opportunity to further develop your skills and prepare you for the future. Our graduates have been making a difference for many, many decades, as you've heard, at a local, a national and an international level. And we know that much has changed during that time and that our graduates are now emerging into a rapidly changing world. In arts, one of our English graduates went on to pursue a career in writing, becoming a journalist at the Sydney Morning Herald, where she worked as an arts writer and a literary editor. After a decade of working with the Sydney Morning Herald, she left to co-found and run the Sydney Story Factory, a not-for-profit creative writing centre for marginalised young people. Her mantra has been to pursue what she loves and what she thinks is important, clearly demonstrated in a life full of storytelling that has contributed to the greater community. You graduates should also feel confident that you are well prepared to take your place in a highly competitive working environment. The fact that you're sitting here this evening proves that you've mastered subject matter, concepts, techniques, and acquired skills that equip you for lifelong learning. You are, of course, also graduating at a time when the rise of populism has spawned such terms as fake news, post-truth and alternative facts. Globalisation has indeed brought many opportunities, and it's also provided us from areas for critical debate and intelligent dialogue. And graduates, this is why it's never been more important that the knowledge that you've gained is applied to societal issues. I urge you to use the knowledge and skills you've learned, especially the power of critical thinking, to rally against this trend and demonstrate that knowledge, facts and evidence matter. Some commentators are suggesting that graduates of the future are likely to have 5 careers and up to 17 jobs. While 40% of jobs may change, they won't disappear. And graduates, you will be creating employment opportunities for graduates of the future. We hope that your UWA degree will empower and equip you to succeed in a career of your choosing, possibly one that is still to be created. But each of you has the capacity to make a difference to society, whether it is through some major arts project or through some business innovation. Importantly, throughout your studies, you will have embraced the capacity to change, to provide innovative solutions, and to question and be open to new ideas and possibilities. This is indeed an exciting time for you. Many of the graduates here tonight are already making their mark. During the year, several graduates have also been recognised with awards and honours for their important achievements in education. This faculty has awarded a total of 229 prizes and scholarships in 2017, an incredible achievement. Your faculty also had 166 students take part in study abroad programmes in universities around the world, from Alabama to Ottawa to Japan. What a wonderful way to get some international experience and education. I'm delighted that you have chosen to study at this university, and of course we're sorry to see you leave, but we know that this is not farewell, because you will always be a part of the UWA community. You will always be welcome here, and we will do our best to support you throughout your career. In turn, we hope that you will stay connected and remain an active alumni member. What makes UWA special and unique is that when the university was established, our founders placed great importance on building a community of graduates. Convocation exists to ensure that all graduates have that lifelong connection to the university. And so, graduates, your hard work and dedication have led you to this moment. And wherever your journey leads you from here, you should be very proud of your achievements. This is your night. Enjoy it. Congratulations. It is now my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Simone Young. Simone is internationally recognised as one of the leading conductors of her generation and has conducted the world's top orchestras. She was General Manager and Music Director of the Hamburg State Opera, Music Director of the Philharmonic State Orchestra Hamburg, and Music Director of Opera Australia, and was appointed a member of the Order of Australia in the Australia Day Honours List. Over the past few months, Simone has appeared as a guest with orchestras in Helsinki, Tokyo, Manchester, Monte Carlo, Bern, and Australia. And this season, her notable debuts will include the LA Philharmonic and the Chicago and Detroit Symphony Orchestras. Please welcome Simone Young.
Pro-Chancellor, graduates, parents, partners and friends of the university. Firstly, congratulations to all the graduates. You can celebrate the conclusion of years of study, commitment, hard work, and hopefully at least a little fun. Well done to all of you. I've had a most interesting time Googling Australian authors looking for quotes that were appropriate for this speech this evening. And I was introduced by this search to a number of interesting Australian writers and philosophers. I have to admit, I had never before heard of Ruby Rich, an early Australian feminist who was also a most accomplished pianist, a concert pianist, in fact. But I was most taken by this statement made by her in 1976. We have not paid our debt to the past, unless we leave the future indebted to us. I'd like you all to remember those words as you listen to what I have to say. We are living in an age of change at unprecedented speed. A lot of things that were taken for granted 2 generations ago are disappearing fast or have already gone. The plan then was that one would do well at school, go to uni, graduate, get a good job in the field in which you had studied, and then keep that job, all being well, for your working life. Now we know that today the average graduate will have a number of different jobs in the space of one career. Some of them will be in his or her specialist field, some perhaps in an associated field, and some perhaps even in a completely different field or one which does not yet exist. It is unprecedented mobility, freedom, and choice. It's exciting, it's seductive, and for some of you, possibly just a little scary. Freedom, choice, mobility, all very desirable things, I think we can agree. Freedom to be whoever we want to be, freedom to acknowledge who we are, even if that person doesn't conform to whom society, our peers, or our families think we should be. Choice of career, with no one able to say you can't do this or that because of your race, gender, religion, life choices. I wonder if you're really aware of what an exciting and open world you are now entering. And mobility, you can travel just about anywhere, continue your studies or take up work almost anywhere. The opportunities are huge. Freedom, mobility, and choice. 3 great words which are the birthright of your generation. But I would like to add 3 more. Generosity, responsibility, and courage. And these are my wishes for your future. I want you to enjoy your mobility, to revel in your freedoms, and I hope you'll make great choices. But if you really want to do something valuable for your society, to make the future indebted to your generation, then you'll acknowledge that responsibility, generosity, and courage turn positive opportunities for yourself into growth and benefit for many. And I think that they are strong values that all of us need to work on to develop. You, the graduates who are today on the brink of the next stage of your lives, and all of us old crusties up here, who, if we're really honest, would have to admit that taking responsibility, being generous, and having courage are 3 things that don't come easily, and that there are many times when we have to remind ourselves to aim for these goals. I find days like today tremendously encouraging. I imagine that many of you have already shown great courage in facing challenges of all kinds. Growing up is a minefield. Working out who you are and how you want to fit in, if you want to fit in. These are big challenges in themselves. Academic studies, competition, social pressure, parental expectations. Well, at least that one's out of the way today. Proud parents here, one and all. That's a lot for one young person to take on. Courage is difficult. We need it most when the easy option looks its most appealing. And it brings with it responsibility. Standing up for yourself, or better still, standing up for someone else, also carries with it the responsibility to carry through. I can challenge a stereotype, call out an injustice, push for change when the status quo is blatantly unfair. But then I have to be ready to rebuild on the other side. Pulling down something is relatively easy, but if you then leave a vacuum, nothing has been achieved. Freedom without responsibility is anarchy and has no future. And to remind you of Ruby Rich, we want to have the future indebted to us. There have been huge and great changes in the way the Western world thinks about society in the last few years. And in the past year, the Me Too movement has had us examining how we interact with one another, and hopefully will continue to create a more balanced and fair workplace for all. Because the internet is a very powerful tool. Opposition to injustice now has a mechanism to mobilize millions of people within a matter of hours, to spread information more rapidly than was possible to imagine even a decade ago, and to garner support for important causes nationally and internationally with lightning speed. But it is also a mechanism that gives a platform to cowards, to those who find a perverse satisfaction in destroying someone's reputation, and for those imposters who pose as authorities on significant matters when they have no better research qualifications than being able to access Google. And to those who can hide viciousness and the ugliest side of human nature behind the anonymity of the web. This is freedom without responsibility and without courage. And without generosity, even the most well-intentioned social movements may become selfish and turn us inwards. I'd like to hope that your generation is the one that will demand change and the rights that should be inherent in society, but that will also have the generosity of spirit to have compassion for those who need time to adjust, and who have perhaps lacked the courage in the past to face the challenges and uncertainties that social change brings. You need to show generosity to listen to opinions that don't necessarily match and validate your own, and have the courage and responsibility to inform yourself of all sides of an argument, and not just to enjoy the comfy satisfaction of exchanges with your Facebook friends that reaffirm your own opinion. So when you've gathered as much as you can of the full picture, be courageous, make a choice, and take the responsibility to see it through. I hesitate to make this personal, but it's a little hard to avoid. As you all know, I'm sure, my profession is one of the last where women are definitely not yet on an equal footing with men. I'm actually okay with that, in terms of numbers at least so far. Because back in the 80s, which I realise was before most of you were born, back in the 80s there were still some symphony orchestras in the world that didn't even accept women players. So it's not surprising that there were hardly any conductors who were women. What I'm not okay with is the assumption that the men are somehow better at it just because they're men. Thankfully, most people today would acknowledge that kind of thinking to be pretty nonsensical. But then I look at the small number of women in government and have to wonder whether that thinking still prevails in some circles. But that's a topic for another day. My career path was anything but direct, and I hope that's of some consolation to those graduates who don't really know what they want to do next. And I chose to study music rather than law, as had been expected by family and teachers. It was my choice, and one I was therefore determined to make worthwhile. Working with other musicians, jobbing with amateur music groups, I slid into conducting before I really knew that that was what I was doing. I rehearsed the choir, I corrected orchestral parts, and one day the conductor was off sick, and I got my chance. And that's where the courage had to kick in. It's all very well to say, I want to do this, but being prepared to put yourself out there, to place yourself in the line of criticism, that's another matter. And I've just lost my place. I'm doing my first speech from an iPad and demonstrating that my generation is not as technically savvy as yours. Just one moment. Here we are. This is where I was up to. Irrespective of your career choices, none of you should ever have to face someone who says, you can't do this because you're a woman or a man, because of your racial background or your life choices or disabilities. The law has caught up with the times, and that sort of behaviour is simply not accepted in the workplace anymore, and that's great. But the 80s were different. I was told to my face by a senior musician, by someone I respected professionally, that I would never be a conductor because, well, women just couldn't do it. So then I made a choice to really go for that goal, to work even harder, and to prove that that unimaginative idiot was wrong. I like to call that courage. I suspect some of my friends might simply call it my bloody-mindedness. So I worked, I dreamed, and I worked some more. And here I am tonight, accepting this wonderful honour from your great university. Now, I look at you, and I can believe that there is plenty of courage here in this room. Some of you will have had to fight against prejudice in your choice of study, maybe even in your choice to study. Perhaps some of you have had to overcome adversity, financial hardships, bullying, disability, but you did the work, you've persevered, and you've done it. A.B. Facey was born into poverty, never had the chance to attend school, and didn't learn to read and write until he was in his teens. He settled in Western Australia very young and led an extraordinary life of courage and generosity. One phrase that comes from his pen, I think, fits today rather well. I never worried about trying something different or having a go at something. I always believed that if you want to do something, you usually can. So what now for this bright and promising assembly of graduates? Well, rather like a great work of music, there is an exposition in which we hear the thematic material and are impressed and moved by its beauty and promise. Well, that's you now. Next comes the development, the next step, how that material is stretched, altered, modulated, and developed. And that's where you're headed next. I'm looking forward to the recapitulation, where the goals and promises of a great beginning are brought to an organic and satisfying whole. I hope to see some of you in future years in various branches of the professions and look forward to someone saying to me, "Do you remember that day at the University of WA when you gave the speech?" Mind you, by then I'll probably be so old that I won't remember anything, but you never know. And if your coda brings some surprises, well, that's fantastic. Share your talents with others. Acknowledge the amazing dedication your teachers, lecturers, tutors, and not least your parents have shown in helping you get to today, and be generous in your thanks to them. They might not always understand everything. Sometimes you may feel they don't understand anything at all, but you are living proof that they believe in your future. My dad was a great man and had much wisdom. One of his favourite sayings was that when he was 14, he realised his father knew absolutely nothing. But by the time he was 21, he was astonished how much his father had learnt in the past 7 years. One of your roles in the coming years will be to keep my generation learning and to be kind to us when we really don't get it. And I don't just mean when our computers crash and we need you for tech help. I like to find inspiration for my work in many different and sometimes surprising places. I find the natural world a constant source of wonder. Be it swimming with whale sharks up at Ningaloo, watching the sunset over the beach, hiking on a glacier in Norway, being caught in a massive storm. In all these things, I find a greatness of natural architecture that I try to invest in the structure of a performance of a score of Bruckner, Mahler, or Brahms. I find the sweetness of early Mozart in the infectious giggle of a small child, or in the wonder I feel when I see a perfect flower. I find inspiration in art, in books, in poetry, and in movies and TV as well. On my flight to Australia this week, I watched The Darkest Hour, the recent movie about Churchill and preparations for Dunkirk. At the conclusion of the film, a quote flashed up from Churchill which seemed strangely apposite for my speech tonight. He said, Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. So once again, congratulations to you all. This is a day to celebrate, and it is the gateway to your future. Enjoy your success and face your future with courage and generosity. Good luck, one and all. You've earned it.
I'm sure you will all agree that Simone's address is a fitting introduction to the primary purpose of this ceremony, which is to confer upon graduates degrees, diplomas and certificates of the university in recognition of their academic achievements. My name's Professor Benjamin Smith. I'm the Associate Dean Research in the Faculty of Arts, Business, Law and Education. And it's my pleasure today to present graduates to the Pro-Chancellor for conferral of the degree of Bachelor of this university. Pro-Chancellor, for the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Anthropology and Sociology, Claire Louise Christie. Melanie Alice Dixon. Georgia Lauren Keeler Finnegan. Xian Yu Lim. Yu Jin Lim. Brenda Catherine Maria McInnes. Lucy Francis Morgan. Shamini Mutharatharan. Dilashini Pathmaraja. Zoe Helen Sutton. Henry Mark Davis Taylor. For the degree of Bachelor Arts with a major in Archaeology, Jessica Lauren Green. Kobe Axel Harris. Shelley Ann Claire Keeley. Sean Carl Lidlow. Sarah Margaret Parker. Olivia Pisano. Matthew William Tetlaw. Tessa Louise Woods. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Asian Studies, Wai To Lau. Ka Wei Wendy So. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Classics and Ancient History, Edward Peter Lehman. Anson Jacob Alexander van Delden. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Communication and Media Studies, Mohammed Hazin bin Abdul Halim. Yusra Al-Awadi. Jack Barlow. Montel Tyra Bauernfeind. Kok Chi Cheng. Gabriel Alexander Clark. Emily Rose Evelyn Edwards. Sheridan Lee Fuentes. Wan Yi Han. Natasha Claire Harris. Pavlina Hatlopoulos. Charmaine Joy Kaur Lee Yi. Amadip Kaur Kondola. Yu Yi Anthea Mary Lee. Fiona Helen Angela Maddock. Caris Georgia Martin. Nadia Moyuddin. Elizabeth Nguyen Tran Chao Nguyen. Iona Taylor Phillips. Faham Shah Ramlan. Leah Kate Roberts. Shinyan Vanessa Jane Sear. Damon Luke Sutton. Aaron Yuan Shan Tan. Georgia Ten. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in English and Cultural Studies, Luke Francis Beeson. Christopher Ellis John Billington. Samantha Louise Brigden. Jack Francis Brockway. Nisha Ann de Cruz. Finley Safin Hoskins. Eliza Grace Huston. Andrew David Johnston. Jeffrey Glyn Jones. Grace Rose Jones. Amy Idlet Moret. Emma Jane Martin. Jamie Samantha Mathers. Anne Louise Moray. Linda Nguyen. Niluka Mudu Nicholson. Julian Edward Naylor Saunders. Laurent George Marcel Shervington. Alana Imogen Whitley White. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in European Studies, Isabel Mary Crockett. Kate Frances Kimberley. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in French Studies, Daisy Grace Alden. Emily Jade Clifford. Anjem Puji Corey Keelig. Tyler Sean White. Hannah Jennifer Wood. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in German Studies, Karl Robert Schatke. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in History, Alice Carol Joyash. Meg Phoebe Drummond Wilson. Gemma Claire Fliss. Samuel Robert McCorber Mullen. Michael Stephen Ninkoff. Brayton Benedict Yanda Ridjevich. Nicholas James Sanderson. Sign N. Tessa Smith. Caitlin Lucy Telford. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Italian Studies, Jessica Giuseppe Caterina Pagono. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Japanese, Angelica Jane Diaz-Reyes. Jin Sun. Gabrielle Shern Ye Ting. Doris Wong Hei Sing. Howard Zapok Young. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Korean Studies, Gabrielle Mary Celeste Sparta. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Linguistics, Connor Thomas Brown. Brenton Ross de Villiers. Cyan Koo. Nicole Mary Blackwell Thatcher. Yo Yu Ray Caitlin. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Medieval and Early Modern Studies, Catherine Louise O'Brien. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Music Studies, Joshua Luke Adams. Sophia Emily Anthony. Laura Rose Biemi. Sean Alexander Fraser. Shane Go. Jade Amanda Hansen. Fanglin Alyssa Liu. Jasmine Lee Middleton. Kate Brooke Milligan. Je Chi-An On. Genevieve Marissa Rose. Emily Rose Schinkel. Amelia Sprague. Brendan Lee Talty. Mia Vukovic. Eloise Victoria Wright. Saishin Annie Yang. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Philosophy, Hugo George Hardesty. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with a major in Political Science and International Relations, Sophie Jacqueline Barclay. Emma Jane Bolton. Eloise Lauren Caitlin. Alice Kimberly Kareen Champali. Alyssa Lara Demel. Rebecca Louise Didko. Ethan Gregory Dodd. Lavina Ann Doré. Tarika Alluk Dogan. Isabel Rose Eagle Flynn. Martha Hill Forrest. Michael Bernard George Hayden. Cloda Alexandra Hussain. Hugh Peter Hutchinson. Samuel Brennan Jardine. Sofia Kuznetsova. Anne-Marie Paisley LaSalle. Claire Emily Langford. Gadwiri Kangai Mutoni Jiwe. Tara Alexis Ott. Robert Clive Purcell. Ravin Uanawaka. Brendan Richard Rasmussen. Joshua Harris Rosells. Briannie Bailey Shanahan. Harrison Peter John Sharrett. Jasgit Kaur Singh. Callum Robert John South. Kate Ellen Story. Lauren Marie Street. Madison Mercedes Taylor Gillett. Harry George Arthur Trumbull. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts with Honours, Joseph Alexander Lunardi. Elizabeth Marie Arundel. Dorinda Joy Hart. Hannah Bailey. Paul Allen Burgesio. Sarah Louise Spina Kajiglas. Andrew William Elliott. Andrew James Gribben. Rebecca Maria Harris. Bronwyn Ruth Herald. Aaron Benjamin Law. Cheryl. Samuel. No. Amy Naomi Kaya Mazlich. Samuel Michael Landro. Cheryl Ann Major. William James Paparo. Arabella Rose Kate Peck. Hannah Rebecca Talon. Thomas Jenkin Wolfe. William Owen Allen. Hannah Louise Cockcroft. Erin Drew Cooley. Rohan Murray Disley. Mallory Lauren Evans. Xavier Evans. Juliana Lucia La Peña. Matthew Henry Ledger. Megan Louise McLean. Rachel Zoe McMinn. Adam Lennox New. Emily Rose Goldflam Phillimore. Delia Ellen Price. Sorry. Troy William Reynolds. Luke Sheldon Robert. Joshua Christopher Santamaria. Eros Scagnetti. Dale James Walter Swass. Michael James Kenneth Smith. Ellen Louise Story. Catherine Madeline Swan. Jackson Griffin Vickery. Andrew Leonard Yallop. James Lyle Yode. Denise Leslie Young. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Minakshi Burr. Lewis William Downs. Robert Thomas Fredrickson. Patricia Violet Hallett. Elizabeth Maria Monroe. Pamela Joy Pitt. For the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Asian Studies, Sik Sik Chow. And for the degree of Bachelor of Arts, Communication Studies, Nguyen Tai Hong Han.
On behalf of this university, I confer the degree of Bachelor upon the graduates presented to me by the Associate Dean Research of the Faculty of Arts, Business, Law and Education. The university is very proud of its Conservatorium of Music and of the performance standards of its students. I therefore have great pleasure in introducing a brief musical interlude by members of the Con Cantorum, one of the UWA vocal ensembles, who will be performing "It Was a Lover and His Lass."
It was a lover and his lass with a hen of ho and a hen on no. And all the green cornfields did pass in springtime, in all the pretty time. And the birds do sing, hey ding a ding ding, hey ding a ding ding, a ding ding a ding ding.
Between the acres of the rye, with a hey and a ho and a hey nonny no, this teety country fools would lie. In springtime, the only pretty ring time, when birds do sing, hey ding a ding a ding, hey ding a ding ding a ding ding a ding ding a ding. Lovers love the spring, and therefore take the present time with a hey and a ho and a hey nonny no. For love is drowned with a brine. In springtime, the only pretty ring time.
When birds do sing, hey ding a ding ding, hey ding a ding ding, a ding ding a ding ding. Sweet lovers love, lovers love the spring.
'Cause the sun shines.
It's my pleasure now to present a graduate to the Pro-Chancellor for conferral of the award of Graduate Diploma of this university. For the Graduate Diploma of Strategic Communication, Isabella Nita Lindrus.
On behalf of this university, I confer the award of Graduate Diploma upon the graduand presented to me by the Associate Dean Research of the Faculty of Arts, Business, Law and Education.
It's my pleasure now to present graduands to the Pro-Chancellor for conferral of the degree of Master of this university. For the degree of Master of Heritage Studies and with distinction, Joshua Paul Cowmond. For the degree of Master of International Relations, Alex Christopher Anastasius. Ahmed Adel Carter. Emily Carita Harrison. Andrew Peter McBride. Anil Kumar Nayak. Caterina Aurelia Angelica Pagani. Vivian Ingrid Pinter. Luke Alfred Podelan. For the degree of Master of International Relations and with distinction, Trisha Tinasha Jakwa. Joshua Liam Wren Lake. For the degree of Master of Music, Mark Medini Holdsworth. Christopher John Milne. For the degree of Master of Philosophy, Brian Wills Johnson. For the degree of Master of Strategic Communication, Xin Yi Wei. For the degree of Master of Strategic Communication with distinction, Rhys Daniel Stacker. For the degree of Master of Translation Studies in Chinese, Yu Zhenji. Jin Rong Li. Meng Ke Wang. Ji Chu Ran Yao. Apologies. Xu Zhang. And Yishan Zhang.
On behalf of this university, I confer the degree of Master upon the graduands presented to me by the Associate Dean Research of the Faculty of Arts, Business, Law and Education.
My name is Professor Kate Wright, and I am the Dean of the Graduate Research School. It is my pleasure today to present graduands to the Pro-Chancellor for conferral of the degree of Doctor of this university. Pro-Chancellor. To qualify for the award of a doctoral degree of this university, a graduand is required over not less than 3 years to complete training at an advanced level and to pursue research leading to a thesis that makes a substantial and original contribution to knowledge. The thesis is examined by 3 distinguished scholars of international standing. The examination process subjects the thesis to criticism and evaluation at the highest level and ensures that a recipient of the degree has demonstrated the ability to carry out successful research which satisfies rigorous standards. Pro-Chancellor, I now present to you a graduand who have completed a thesis that has fulfilled the requirements for the award of the degree of Doctor of Musical Arts of this university. For the degree of Doctor of Musical Arts, and for a thesis entitled French Symbolist Affinities in a Late Work of Toru Takemitsu, an analysis of And Then I Knew 'Twas Wind for flute, viola and harp, I present to you Philip Richard Murray.
On behalf of this university, I confer the degree of Doctor upon the graduate presented to me by the Dean of the Graduate Research School.
Pro-Chancellor, I now present to you graduands who have completed theses that have fulfilled the requirements for the award of the degree of Doctor of Philosophy of this university. For the degree, Pro-Chancellor, for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy, and for a thesis entitled Law is Story, Indigeneity and Narrative Jurisprudence in Australia after Mabo, I present to you Stephen Hubert de Hare. For a thesis entitled Norm Circles, Stigma and the Securitization of Asylum, a comparative study of Australia and Sweden, I present to you Mary Lynn de Silva. For a thesis entitled Algorithmic Governance and Civil Society, the Impact of Big Data on Order and Reflexivity, I present to you Colleen Elizabeth Harmer. For a thesis entitled Inside the Outline, Understanding Inclusive and Exclusive Identity in Marapika-Runya, Port Hedland, Rock Art, I present to you Samantha Nicole Harper. For a thesis entitled Aboriginal Occupation Traces in Agricultural Assemblages, York Peninsula, Gooranda, South Australia, I present to you Belinda Jean Liebelt. For a thesis entitled Hegemonic Negotiation and LGBT Representation in Contemporary Teen Films, I present to you Andrea Pauline McRae. For a thesis entitled in English, A Study of 16th Century Book Bindings from the Historical Quellenberg Library and their Lutheran Imagery, I present to you Christine Poore. For a thesis entitled The Ghosts of the Gothic in Peter Ackroyd's Literary London, I present to you Ashley Jane Prosser. For a thesis entitled Western Misconceptions Underplay Intrinsic Human Musicking, a Hermeneutic Exploration, I present to you Eve Elizabeth Ruddock. for a thesis entitled Purely of Their Own Manufacture, the Adoption and Appropriation of Cricket in Samoa, circa 1879 to 1939, I present to you Benjamin Sachs. For a thesis entitled International Norms and the Regulation of Innovative Warfare, Applying Lessons from History to Emerging Cyber Warfare, I present to you Matthew Oliver Sawyers. For a thesis entitled The Correspondence of Rosando Salvado to Propaganda Fide, 1849 to 1900, Italian as a Language of Communication in the 19th Century Catholic Missionary Church, I present to you Frederica Verdina. For a thesis entitled Forms of Resistance, I present to you Robert Denish Wood. And for a thesis entitled Antecedents of the Gothic Mode in Early Modern Poetry, I present to you Hong Sheng Colin Yo.
On behalf of this university, I confer the degree of Doctor upon the graduates presented to me by the Dean of the Graduate Research School. From time to time, the Senate confers upon an outstanding scholar a higher doctorate of the university, and I now call upon the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Dawn Freshwater, to present two scholars for conferral of the degree of Doctor of Letters.
Pro-Chancellor, the award of a degree of Doctor of Letters of this university is a prestigious and a rare honour, recognising a substantial and distinguished contribution to knowledge through work of which the whole or a substantial part has been published or accepted for publication. Assessment of the worthiness of the work for the award of the degree is undertaken by 3 distinguished scholars of international standing. The rigorous process of evaluation ensures that the degree is only awarded to scholars of outstanding merit. Pro-Chancellor, Adjunct Professor Patrick Armstrong presented a thesis for the degree of Doctor of Letters entitled Ecosystems, Islands and Ideas, Geographical and Interdisciplinary Studies of Humanity's Relationship with the Environment. Adjunct Professor Armstrong recalls that when he was about 9 or 10, he used to see Gwen Reveret, an elderly lady who had an artist's easel mounted on her wheelchair, painting scenes along the river in Cambridge. She was pointed out with something akin to awe as the granddaughter of Charles Darwin. Since that time, Patrick has had an interest in the Darwin family, and particularly in the life, work and influence of Charles Darwin. He has visited many of the actual sites that the Victorian naturalists visited during the voyage of HMS Beagle, 1831 to 1836, and has undertaken field work, often with photocopies of Darwin's field notes in hand, in island groups such as the Falklands, the Azores, the Cocoskeeling Islands, Tahiti, and in several parts of Australia and New Zealand. He has located the sites from which Darwin collected fossil, rock, plant and animal specimens, traced the routes he followed, and thus attempted to understand how he reacted to a variety of environments and how they influenced the development of his ideas. He has demonstrated, for example, that the visit to the Galapagos Islands has probably been greatly overemphasized. It was the fact that Darwin visited many islands and knew how to compare them. That was the secret of his success. In some instances, the visit of the Beagle with Darwin aboard was the first time, or almost the first time, in which systematic scientific observations on some islands were made, and thus Darwin's notes provide a baseline for later comparisons. Patrick was therefore sometimes able to use his visits to demonstrate the extent to which human activities had transformed even the remotest of islands and island groups over the subsequent 200 years, providing data with conservation and resource management implications. Pro-Chancellor, I present to you for conferral of the degree of Doctor of Letters of this university, Patrick Hamilton Armstrong. Pro-Chancellor, Mr. Joseph Nolan presented a thesis for the degree of Doctor of Letters entitled The Complete Organ Works of Charles Murray Widder, Joseph Nolan, Signum Records, United Kingdom. The works submitted by Mr. Nolan for examination were a commercially released recording of the organ symphonies of Charles Murray Widder recorded in Paris, Lyon and Toulouse, using a new critical edition by Dr. John Neer. The published critical reaction to these recordings has been unanimous worldwide in its praise in the pursuit of this ideal in recreating historically informed performances that fully capture the symphonic sense of scale and arc. The discs have won innumerable 5-star reviews and editors' choices in Gramophone, BBC Music Magazine and Limelight Magazine. Combining these new critical editions with recordings that utilise the very organs and churches that Widder would have played, Dr. Nolan has sought to use this research to recreate, as closely as is possible, Widder's historical performance practice to life on record. These recordings are published by Signum Records UK, winners of the Gramophone Label of the Year at the 2017 Classical Music Awards, and are amongst the most praised recordings ever released for organ. They're also praised from Gramophone and the Australian newspaper. They've hailed the recordings as utterly authoritative, and MusicWeb International as the best set available. Very notably, Gramophone awarded the final disc in the cycle a Critics' Choice 2017. The discs have been broadcast worldwide, with BBC Radio 3 Record Review hailing the cycle as magnificent. A truly profound set of recordings that will impact the place of the Widder symphonies in the canon of organ music for generations. Pro-Chancellor, I present to you for the conferral of the degree of Doctor of Letters of this university, Joseph Dominic Nolan.
behalf of this university, I confer the degree of Doctor of Letters upon the graduates who've been presented to me by the Vice-Chancellor. On behalf of this university, I confer in absentia respective awards upon those graduates who were unable to be present at this ceremony and whose names are printed in the program. And it's my habit to ask you to applaud them even though they aren't here. Ladies and gentlemen, graduates, we now come to a very important part of the ceremony, the conferring of an honorary degree which recognises distinguished services by an individual who has made a significant difference to the community. So it gives me great pleasure to invite the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Freshwater, to introduce and present Ms. Simone Young for conferral of the honorary degree of Doctor of Music.
Pro-Chancellor, Australian-born Simone Young is internationally recognised as one of the leading conductors of her generation. She was born in Sydney and claims Irish ancestry on her father's side and Croatian ancestry on her mother's side. Raised in the Sydney suburb of Balgoa, she attended Mont Saint Angelo College in North Sydney. After studying at the New South Wales Conservatorium, she joined the Australian Opera in 1983 as a repetiteur playing piano in rehearsals and going on to assist conductors Charles Mackerras, Richard Bonning and Stuart Challenger. She conducted the first opera in 1985, and a year later was the youngest person and first female to be appointed as a resident conductor. In 1986, she was also named Young Australian of the Year. In 1987, on an Australian Council grant, Simone went to the Cologne Opera, and 2 years later was made assistant to James Conlon there. A summer season of Wagner in Beirut and a pianist for Daniel Barenboim led to an appointment as his assistant and resident conductor at the Berlin State Opera in 1993. In 2000, Simone conducted the Sydney Symphony Orchestra's performance of Elena Kat-Chernon's Deep Sea Dreaming at the opening ceremony of the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney. For a decade, until 2015, Simone Young was both artistic director of the Hamburg State Opera and music director of the city's Philharmonic Orchestra, a weighty dual role that we're told is normally occupied by two people. She presided over a workforce of over 700 and an annual purse of $97 million, riches undreamt of outside all but the world's top companies. She conducted repertoire ranging from Mozart, Verdi, Puccini, Wagner, Strauss, Britten and Henze. She is an acknowledged interpreter of the operas of Wagner and Strauss, and her 2012 tour to Brisbane with the Hamburg Opera and Ballet won her the 2013 Helpman Award for the Best Individual Classical Music Performance. Simone has enjoyed a more than 30-year career filled with glittering firsts. The 2016-17 season saw her make her BBC Proms and BBC Symphony debuts, as well as returning to the Berlin Staatsoper for a Tannhauser, Munich for Tristan and Isolde, Fidelio and Elektra, Vienna Staatsoper for a new production of Prokofiev's The Gambler, Faust and Parsifal, Frankfurt for Emani and Carmen in Paris. She also conducted the Stockholm, Helsinki and Dresden Philharmonic Orchestras. Queensland, Sydney and West Australian symphony orchestras, and at the Grafenegg Festival returned to the Australia World Orchestra with the Australian National Academy of Music. 2017 also marked the commencement of her appointment as the principal guest conductor of the Lausanne Chamber Orchestra. The current season sees Simone return to the Vienna State Opera, to the Zurich Opera and to Royal Swedish Opera. Equally in demand on the concert podium, she appears as a guest with orchestras in Helsinki, Tokyo, Manchester, Monte Carlo, Bern and, of course, Australia. In 2018, notable debuts will include the LA Philharmonic and the Chicago and Detroit Symphony Orchestras. She's conducted the world's leading orchestras, and her development of musical standards has received praise from the profession, the public, and the media. Simone's accolades and awards are too numerous to list, but included among them, as you've heard, there are the Green Room Awards, Helpman Awards, the Moe Award for Classical Performer of the Year, and a nomination for a Grammy Award. In 2004, she was appointed as a member of the Order of Australia, and in 2005, she received the prestigious Goethe Institute Medal, and in 2011, awarded the Sir Bernard Heinz Award. Despite being based in Europe and having raised her two daughters there, Simone's family has retained its Australian identity. The country has a deep respect and admiration for its music ambassador, expressed very clearly by Martin Musicot, writing for The Australian in 2015. The conductor herself was cheered as she mounted the podium, while the Queensland Symphony Orchestra looked like it couldn't wait to get stuck in. And that's pretty much how it stayed all night. The orchestra playing out of its skin for a conductor it clearly adores. Pro-Chancellor, in recognition of her contribution at an international level to classical music and music education, it is my privilege to present to you for the conferral of the honour degree of Doctor of Music, Simone Young.
On behalf of this university, I confer the honorary degree of Doctor of Music upon Simone Margaret Young. I'm all out of breath. I now invite the Warden of Convocation, Dr. Doug McGee, to welcome today's new graduates.
Fellow graduates, as the Warden of Convocation of the University, I congratulate you on your graduation. We have graduates, new, first time, and others who are receiving latter degrees, and it's fantastic to see. As graduates, you join the diverse and incredibly talented alumni of this university. Because of UWA's unique structure and supporting legislation, you also automatically join Convocation, the representative body of the graduates, as lifelong members. As members of Convocation, you now have the right and privilege to share in and contribute to the intellectual and cultural life of the university, and to stand for election to the Council of Convocation and for the 2 places on Senate elected by members of Convocation. As members of Convocation, you join over 150,000 graduates who have successfully completed their studies at UWA over the past 100 years. The friendships you have developed as a student at UWA are fostered within Convocation to support valued lifelong networks. Convocation's members range from young to older, and all are welcome, valued and supported. As time passes after graduation, you'll enjoy seeing and hearing the stories of success of your fellow students. And tonight we've been graced with a wonderful, inspiring story of a wonderful, inspiring person, and I welcome you to Convocation, Simone. Convocation is extremely proud to be able to promote the wonderful achievements of our members and looks forward to telling your story. I welcome you as a new or return member and encourage you to continue the relationship with the university, which began when you chose to study here and continues as a member of Convocation. Congratulations and best wishes.
Today we are primarily celebrating the achievements of our students. It is appropriate, therefore, that a student voice should be heard to mark this significant occasion. I'm very pleased to invite Miss Kate Milligan, who graduated today with a Bachelor of Arts with a major in Music Studies, to give a valedictory address on behalf of all today's graduates.
Pro-Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, members of the Senate, distinguished guests, members of staff, graduates and their guests. I'm indescribably thankful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my fellow graduating students this evening. Graduates, it is my hope for the next few minutes that I might capture and express some of your thoughts and emotions this evening as we reflect on our studies together. However, I would like to first extend a very warm and heartfelt congratulation of my own to each of you. This evening is a testament to the strength of your commitment to knowledge and learning. Each of you will have faced a unique series of challenges throughout your studies, and it is a hugely admirable thing to have persevered with all of your hard work now represented by that very special piece of paper in your hands. Occasions like these, where the brightest minds are gathered together in such numbers, are few and far between. It is amazing to think about what each of you will achieve in the future as individuals, let alone what we could all achieve together. As a collective, we wield an extraordinary amount of influence. We are the driving force that will propel our society into the future, and we will define what that future looks like. It is because of this that our graduation tonight is symbolic of an obligation we all bear as we continue on our respective paths. A tertiary education is a great privilege, one that is not available to everybody. We must ask ourselves how best to apply the skills that UWA has given us, and how we can raise up the less fortunate, so that eventually they may be awarded the same opportunities and privileges. The question then follows, how best to go about this? As students of the arts and humanities, I believe that each of us understands what it means to act compassionately. It is my opinion that the arts shed light on what it means to be fundamentally human, and that the best art always reflects a degree of analytical thought or even criticism to do with the world around us. In this way, great art can be some of the most useful tools in acts of compassion. This is exemplified in the work of Yehudi Menuhin, the great 20th century violinist, educator and peace advocate. Menuhin was the first Jewish musician to return to Germany after World War I and the Holocaust, playing several concerto concerts with the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra in 1947 as an act of reconciliation. To Jewish critics, he said that the aim was to rehabilitate Germany's music and spirit. This was just one of Menuhin's extraordinary acts of compassion in the life of many. As much of his career was spent in education, I thought he'd be an apt example to use on a night that celebrates just that. On the relationship between compassion and education, Menuhin offered the following words of wisdom. Why is compassion not part of our established curriculum, an inherent part of our education? Compassion, awe, wonder, curiosity, exaltation, and humility. These are the very foundation of any real civilization. No longer the prerogatives or the preserves of any one church, but belonging to everybody, to every child in every home and in every school. Graduates, I hope you will agree with me when I say that our tertiary education has allowed us to come to appreciate compassion, awe, wonder, exaltation, and humility as they manifest around us. Furthermore, our studies have taught us to apply logic and analysis to these concepts so that we may optimise our own usefulness and our own social mobility. So all of this having been said, we can only ask how exactly to move forward. My advice would be to constantly critique the world around you, ask what could be better and how you can make change happen. Do not be afraid to challenge the status quo. Put your findings into music, poetry, visual art, and perhaps even a thesis every now and again. Use the skills that have been instilled in you for as much good as you can possibly fathom. Inject compassion into your day-to-day living as well as into your larger-scale projects, and you will be rewarded, respected, and most importantly, you will inspire others. So a huge congratulations once again. I look forward to marvelling at all of your future achievements that will no doubt change the world. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your participation in tonight's proceedings, which has made it very memorable for all the graduates. I especially wish to thank Dr. Simone Young for giving the graduation address and Kate Milligan for her valedictory address. Both speakers have enriched these proceedings with their perspectives. To all the new graduates, I offer my warmest congratulations. As UWA graduates, your achievements will enhance the reputation of this university, and we hope you'll keep in touch with us over the coming years to let us know what you're doing, and that you'll retain a lifelong connection as a part of the university community. The ceremony is now concluded, and I invite you to join us on Whitfell Court for light refreshments. Members of the audience are asked to rise and remain standing in their places until the procession, including the new graduates, has left the hall. I thank you.